Good evening, everyone. The paper I present today is Attack of the Tails. Yes, you really can backdoor federated learning. And this paper focuses on the challenges of robustness of federated learning systems. In particular, we'll look into their vulnerability with regards to the edge case backdoor attacks. First of all, why is robustness an important challenge? A recent report by Facebook indicates that decentralized learning settings are vulnerable to worst-case data and hardware failures. Many times, these failures are instigated by adversarial agents that are poisoning the training data. Furthermore, in the recent federated learning paper, it is highlighted that the decentralized nature of federated learning systems leads themselves to new attacks by adversarial agents. In this work, we try to understand the extent of these system vulnerabilities to adversaries. Okay, in federated learning, a global model is stored in the central server or cloud provider, and the training occurs in decentralized nodes. And each of these nodes owns a local and a private data set. During each iteration, the global model is pushed to a subset of the nodes, and each of these nodes performs a few local epochs of SGD to find the local model and then sends it back to the server. The problem we are interested about is the effectiveness of training time attacks instigated by a small subset of adversarial nodes. This work is particularly interested with the topic of robustness, specifically with the different set of attacks that one can come up with to corrupt the global federated learning model. In general, focus on this area, we consider two kinds of attacks. The first one is data poisoning attack. In this attack, the adversary multiplies data so that the local model affects the global model. And another attack is model poisoning attack. In this attack, the adversary replaces local model with one that misbehaves. The goal of both of these attacks is after model averaging takes place, certain performance metrics of the global model are negatively affected, or some factors are inserted that make the global model mispredict on some of its prediction tasks. There has recently been a lot of research in trying to characterize the effectiveness of these attacks, but also coming up with defense methods against them. So it is a question to ask whether current federated learning systems are robust to these types of adversarial training time attacks. A recent work by researchers at Cornell Tech presents ways to insert backdoors during the federated learning. The goal of a backdoor attack is to corrupt the global federated learning model into a targeted misprediction on a specific subtask. For example, by forcing an image classifier to misclassify green cards as frogs. This way that these backdoor attacks are achieved is by effectively replacing the global federated learning model with the attacker's model. However, a follow-up work by Google questions the effectiveness of these attacks, essentially stating that simple defense methods such as the norm clipping of the models can significantly limit their effectiveness. It is currently an open problem whether federated learning models can be rather robust to backdoors or whether backdoors are an inherent vulnerability of these methods. This paper presents new theory and algorithm establishing that federated learning models are unavoidably susceptible to backdoors. First, we will introduce 3 edge case backdoor attacks. And here is the definition. You can see federated learning aims to minimize empirical loss, and L is the loss function, and the D is the union of K clients data size. In this work, we focus on attack algorithms that leverage data from the tail of the input data distribution. We first define a P edge case example set as follows. And let X follows the distribution of Px. A set of labeled example D edge is called a P edge case example set if it satisfies this equation. So after defining the D edge subset, you can see, given that the P edge case example set D edge is available to the attackers, their goal is to inject the backdoor into the global model so that the global model predicts yi when the input is xi for all xi yi in D edge. And the yi is the target label chosen by the attacker. Moreover, in order for the attacker's model to not stand out, it has to perform well on the true data set D. Therefore, the objective of an attacker is to maximize the accuracy of the classifier on the union of D and the D edge. Here is the 3 edge case backdoor attacks. The first one is the data poisoning attack. Under the data poisoning attack, the attackers perform standard local training without modification on a locally crafted dataset D prime. And it aims to maximize the accuracy of the global model on the union of D and the D edge. We can construct the D prime by combining some data points from D and some from D edge. By choosing this ratio, adversaries can bypass defense algorithm and craft attacks that persist longer. The second attack is the PGD attack. PGD means projected gradient descent. Under this attack, adversaries applied projected gradient descent on the losses for D for the union of D and the D edge, with the constraint that the local model does not divide too much from the global model. If an adversary ran SGD for too long, the resulting model would significantly diverge from its origin. So first, the adversary chooses the attack budget delta, which is small enough so that it is guaranteed that any model Wi sent by the adversary would not get detected by the norm-based defense methods. And the adversary then runs PGD where the projection happens on the ball centered around W with reduced delta. Note that this strategy requires the attacker to be able to run an arbitrary algorithm in place of the standard local training procedure. And the third attack is the PGD attack with model replacement. This attack combines the PGD attack and the model replacement attack. The model parameter is scaled before being sent to the server so as to cancel the contributions from other benign nodes. We can assume a adversary client I and donate is update the local model by WI prime. The model replacement transmit back to the server. And assume that W has almost converged. Every benign client I will submit WI is similar to W. So the global model that update in this iteration will similar to the WI prime. So use this attack. The malicious client can cancel the contributions from some other benign clients. Okay, and after the 3 attacks, the paper proposes 3 theories, and here is the definition. You can see FW is an L layer fully connected narrow network, and W is its width. We said that one can craft epsilon adversarial examples for FW if for all xy in the edge, there exists epsilon x with the concentration. And also we say that a backdoor for FW exists if there exists W prime, such for that the for all xy in the union of D and the D edge, the FW prime x equals to y. The first theory is if a model is susceptible to adversarial examples, then it is also vulnerable to training time backdoor attacks. And you can see if epsilon adversarial examples exist, then a backdoor exists. Then we can get the equation. From the upper bound, we have that the existence of the adversarial examples of small radius implies the existence of backdoors within small perturbations. And therefore, defending against backdoors is at least as hard as defending against adversarial examples. This implies that certifying backdoor robustness is at least as hard as certifying robustness against adversarial examples. And the lower bound asserts that the model perturbation cannot be small if there exists good data points and the backdoor data points which are close to each other, and which can justify the importance of edge case examples. So, as it stands, resolving the existence of
Honglu, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, okay.
I have a quick question here. So from the takeaway we have here, it seems this kind of backdoor attack is can almost equals to the adversary sample adding, right?
Yeah.
So is there any kind of a very clear difference? You know, for example, this one you can define as a backdoor attack. The other one you can define as adversary examples or adversary sampling. Do we have you know, the clear separation between these two definitions, or sometimes they can use interchangeably? Because from the description here, it seems they don't separate the adversary examples from the backdoor attack that much. It's similar. It seems they can be used interchangeably, right?
Yeah. Mm.
Okay. Just want to make sure my understanding is correct. Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the last sentences.
No, I just want to make sure, my understanding is correct. So my understanding is, these two concepts, according to their description, it kind of can be used interchangeably. Sometimes for the same thing, you can think, okay, that's adversary examples. Also, it can be regarded as backdoor attacks.
Mm.
Or do you think there's a clear borderline to separate those two concepts?
I think in this paper, the authors write that if the epsilon is small enough, so the adversary can equals to the backdoor attacks.
Mm-hmm. I would say probably adversary examples probably is more general, and the backdoor attack, for example, here, you have some predefined purpose, right? So you want to by modify the gradient so that you can classify X to certain kind of target label, this attack try to achieve. Is that what they're talking about here? But anyway, that's just my confusion. I just a little bit confused about these two concepts. So yeah.
Can I join the discussion?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. To your question, from my perspective, I think the backdoor attacks is more like to describe a purpose. It means the purpose of the attack is to mislead the model to predict another class, and the adversary examples is one way to achieve this goal. You can use data poisoning or model poisoning. So that means one is general description for this attack, and one is a specific way to achieve this this goal from my perspective.
Which one is more general? My original understanding is adversary sample and examples are more general, and backdoor attack is more specific. But according to what you're saying, it seems the backdoor is more general, and the adversary sample is just approach to achieve this backdoor attack.
The backdoor attack, it kind of just describe a certain attack that will mislead the model, and for the adversary examples, it can be used to the Byzantine attack. It means they just mess up your model. It doesn't lead your model to another direction. For example, in this presentation before, you predicted the green car to folks is like misleading. It's the purpose of this backdoor attack. But you can also use, you can also add some adversary examples to the original training process to just make this model not work at all. So that's what I mean. The adversary samples is a way to, achieve some attack but the backdoor is kind of a specific purpose of attack. I don't know whether I.
No. I don't know, especially to machine learning area, the backdoor attack is defined like this or not. But the backdoor attack can be very, very general in general security and privacy area, right? So you can go through the backdoor and store many information, stuff like that. It's not necessary to be something like, do the mislabeling or some misclassification or misleading the classification to wrong label. It's not necessary to be like this. So, but anyway, that's just my confusion because I'm not sure, what exactly the backdoor attack.
In this paper, the backdoor attack means, for example, the attacker can change the labels. So, for example, change the label of green cards into a frogs or something. The author means the backdoor attacks means that.
Okay. So in this paper, it seems the adversary examples is more general than backdoor attack, right? So backdoor attack is
I think
more
so.
specific. Yeah. Okay. Thank you then.
Okay, thank you. And okay.
Please continue.
Okay. And so there is a question from the defender's viewpoint, whether or not one defender can detect a backdoor in a given model. And in this paper, the author assumed that the defender has access to the labeling function G, and the defender is provided a ReLU network F as the model granted by the federated learning system. Then checking backdoors in F using G is equivalent to checking if F equals to G. And here's the second theory. Detecting backdoors in a model is NP hard by a reduction from 3 SAT. And first, we can show that the reduction can be completed in polynomial time. This can be done by showing the size of a ReLU network is polynomial in the size of 3 SAT problem. And then the authors show that the answer to the 3 SAT problem is yes, if and only if the answer to the corresponding backdoor problem is yes. So thereby completing the reduction.
Hey, can I ask a question here? Like, what is 3 SAT?
You mean what's 3 SAT?
Yeah, I don't know about that. This is the first time I see this
It's an NP hard problem, and I think most of the NP hard problem can be proved using the reduction from it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a classic NP hard problem.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Okay. Here.
So what is the F? What is the G there for the 3 SAT problem?
The F and the G. I think it is.
The G is the labeling function, okay, and the F is the ReLU network.
Yeah.
Then
the F is the ReLU network.
So these here, we try to use an example to prove the theory. Is that true?
Yeah. The detailed proof is shown at the end of the paper, and in the here
So
the
it's okay. I
author used
mean, so here, while we have a labeling function G and a ReLU network F here, is we trying to use example to prove the theory makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But in the more general way, we could have the G can indicate other functions, and the F could be a different
Yes.
network, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And the next is the third theory, and the backdoors hidden in regions of small measure are likely to be detected using gradient-based algorithm. And the key idea of this construction is that the ReLU function is zero as long as the argument is non-positive. Therefore, it suffices to find two networks that are negative almost everywhere and have one network positive on a small site. So the author proves this theory also use an example, and the next part is the evaluation part. The goal of the study is to highlight the effectiveness of edge case attack against the SOTA of federated learning defenses. The SOTA defenses including the normal difference collapsing, CRAM, multi-CRAM, and the RFA, and also DP. And in the experiments, they also considered 5 tasks, and including the K here means the number of all the clients, and the M means the number of clients participates per federated learning round. Okay, and in this experiment, the author evaluate the effectiveness of each case and not so each case. This figure is based on the task 1. Note that in the edge case settings, among all the clients, only the adversary contains samples from the D edge. So the figure shows the experimental results when we allow some of the benign clients to also hold some samples from the edge, but they have the correct labels. They also vary the percentage of samples from the edge split across the adversary and the benign clients as P. And we can observe that the effectiveness of the attack drops as we allow more of the edge to be available to benign clients. So the pure edge case attacks are the strongest. And the second experiment evaluate the edge case backdoors against different defense methods. In this experiment, the fixed frequency attacks is 1 per 10 rounds, and you can see the target task black box means the data poisoning attack, and the PGD the blue line means the PGD attacks without model replacement, and the purple line means the PGD attacks with model replacement. You can see the PGD methods are effective on all of the 4 defense methods, but the data poisoning method may be ineffective against the CRAM and the multi-CRAM. And the authors also studied the effectiveness of the edge case attack and the various attacking frequencies, and both fixed frequencies attack and the fixed pool attack settings. You can see the lower attacking frequency leads to slower speed for the attacker to inject the edge case attack in both settings. And under a very low attacking frequency, the attacker still manages to gradually inject the backdoor as long as the federated learning process runs for long enough. And the authors also evaluate the effectiveness on models of different capacity. The experiment is based on the task 1 and task 4. The blue line, purple line, and the red line means the capacity equals 2, 1, and 0.5. And you can see when the capacity is bigger, the effective is stronger. Okay, that's all.